Hello, and welcome to your iLearn review day 1. Today we're going to focus on adding and subtracting rational numbers or multiplying and dividing rational numbers. Primarily, our focus is going to be working on positive and negative fractions or mixed numbers. So let's take a look at number 1. We have negative 2/5 plus 1 1/3. The first thing I honestly like to do is to change all of the mixed numbers into improper fractions. So negative 2/5 is already set up as a fraction. We want to change 1 1/3 to where it is a fraction as well. So what you're going to do is you're going to multiply 3 times 1, and then you're going to add 1 to that. So 3 times 1 is 3, plus 1 is 4, and then the 3 is going to stay the same. And now we have an improper fraction. And so we're just going to move that down. Negative 2/5 is going to stay the same, and then plus 4/3. In order to add fractions together, they must have a common denominator. And so we're going to come up with a common denominator. And what I notice is that the common denominator should be 15. And so to make 5 equal 15, we're going to multiply by 3. And if we multiply the 5 by 3, we got to multiply the 2 by 3. So 2 times 3 is 6. Keep the negative sign. Plus, and then we got to make the 3 15. So we're going to multiply it by 5. So 3 times 5 is 15. And if we do that to the 3, we got to do it to the 4. So 5 times 4 is 20. And now we have negative 6 over 15 plus 20 over 15. When you're adding a negative to a positive, the easiest way to do this is to subtract and keep the sign of the larger number. So 20 minus 6 is 14. The 15 stays the same. The denominator stays the same when you add or subtract. And so then I have to check, should it be negative or positive? So since 20 is bigger than negative 6, we keep the positive sign. So the answer is 14 over 15. Final step would be to check to see if it reduces. In this case, it does not. So your answer is 14 over 15. Now would be a good time to pause the video and let the students work on problems 2, 3, and 4. Let's take a look at number 2. Again, I have mixed numbers, so the first thing I want to do is convert them to improper fractions. So to do that, I'm going to do 4 times 3 plus 3. So 12, 15 over 4. And then we want to change 8 and 1/3. 3 times 8 is 24, plus 1 is 25, and it stays over 3. The next thing I want to do is make sure that I have a common denominator again because I'm adding. And so 4 and 3, the common denominator would be 12. So to make 4 equal 12, I've got to multiply by 3. Whatever I do to the bottom, I'm going to have to do to the top. So 3 times 15 is 45. Bring down my plus sign. Don't forget your negative sign. And then we want to look at 25 over 3. So to make 3 equal 12, we've got to multiply by 4. To make 25, do the same thing. We want to multiply that by 4. So 4 times 25 is 100. Again, in this case, we have a positive plus a negative. The same thing's true. You want to subtract and keep the sign of the larger number. So 45 and negative 100. 100 minus 45 is 55. The 12 stays the same, and then because 100 is bigger, we keep the negative sign. We do want to reduce this back to a mixed number, so we know that it's going to be negative. 12 goes into 55 4 times, and that gives me 48. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 55 and subtract 48, so which gives me 7. The 12 stays the same. And so I have negative 4 and 7 twelfths. You need to check to make sure that 7 twelfths reduces. If it does not, then that's your answer. And in this case, it does not reduce, so your answer is 4, negative 4 and 7/12. Looking at number 3, we already have these in improper fractions. 4 over 3 minus 12 over 7. However, we still need to have a common denominator. And the common denominator for 3 and 7 would be 21. So to make 3 equal 21, we got to multiply by 7. So 7 times 4 is 28. Bring down your minus sign. And then we got to do the same thing to the next fraction. To make 7 equal 21, we got to multiply by 3. And we got to do that to the top as well. So 3 times 12 is 36. Now we have a positive minus a positive, which is really not a problem. You're just going to subtract straight across. The 21 is going to stay the same. But we have a smaller number subtracting a bigger number. When that happens, it guarantees that your answer will be negative, and then you just subtract. So 36 minus 28 is 8. And then we have to check to see if it reduces. There are no common factors between 8 and 21, so the answer is going to stay negative 8 over 21. Taking a look at number 4, we again have a fraction minus or adding a mixed number. So the first thing we want to do is convert the mixed number to an improper fraction. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7. The 3 stays the same. They already have a common denominator, so we don't have to worry about that part. So we've got negative 1/3 plus 7/3. Again, you have a negative plus a positive, so you're going to keep the sign of the larger number. So 7 minus 1 is 6. Because 7 is bigger, it stays positive, and then the 3 stays the same. Now we have to check to see if it will reduce. 6 over 3 does reduce to simply 2, and that is your answer. Moving on to problem number 5. In this case, we now have 3 terms in our problem. And so we want to convert them to improper fractions just like we did before. So 2/5 is fine. Negative 2/5 is fine. We're going to change negative 2 to negative 2 over 1. And we're going to change 4 and 3/8 to 8 times 4 is 32 plus 3 is 35 over 8. Now, we have them all as improper fractions. We still need to have a common denominator. Some people just do 2 terms at a time. I'm going to go ahead and convert them all 3. So what I know that 5, 1, and 8 have in common is the number 40. So to change negative 2/5 to where it has a 40 as the denominator, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to multiply the 5 by 8. And because we multiply the 5 by 8, we got to multiply the 2 by 8. And we get negative 16 over 40. Bring down your plus sign. 2 over 1. To make 1 equal 40, we multiply by 40. And then to make 40 times 2 would be 80. Don't forget your negative sign. Bring down your plus sign. And now we've got to multiply 8 by 5 to make it equal 40 on the bottom. 35 multiplied by 5 is 175. And if you're not sure, please use Desmos calculator, and we can simply just check 35 times 5 equals 175. You can go back to your paper. Now that we have them all with a common denominator, we can simply start the process of solving the problem or simplifying the problem. So negative 16 plus negative 80. When they both have the same sign, you're simply going to add. So 96 is what 16 plus 80 is. They stay negative because we're going to keep the negative sign. Bring down plus 175 over 40. Again, you're now down to just 2 terms. You have negative 96 over 40 plus 175. And then when they have different signs and you're going to add them, you really subtract and keep the sign of the larger number. So the first thing is 40 is just simply going to stay the same. And so we got to figure out what negative 96 is plus 175. If you're not sure, you can go to the calculator. Again, Desmos is a great help here. And so all you would do is negative 96 plus 175. We find out that it equals 79. And so go back to your paper and you can write down 79 on top. And the calculator really did the positive negative thing for us, but just to be on the safe side, check 175 is larger than larger than 96, so we keep the positive sign. We don't want to just stop there though, because 79 over 40 can actually be reduced. So you can change 79 over 40 into 1 and 39 over 40. You should check to see if 39 over 40 can be reduced further. However, it cannot, so this is going to be your final answer. Moving on to problem number 6, again, we have 3 terms. So the first thing I'm going to do is make sure that I make them all improper fractions first. And so 1/2 is fine. We're going to change negative 3 and 7/8 to negative 8 times 3 is 24, plus 7 is 31. We leave it over 8. And then we're going to change 3 and 2/3 to 3 times 3 is 9, plus 2 is 11. And we're going to leave it over 3. Now, so far all I've done is change them to improper fractions. The next thing I want to do is make sure that we have common denominators. And in this case, the common denominator, the smallest that we can come up with, is 24. So 1/2 is going to become 12 over 24, because 2 times 12 is 24, 1 times 12 is 12. Bring your minus sign over. We want to change 31 over 8 to where it has a denominator of 24, so it's going to stay negative. And 3 times 8 is 24, but we also have to do 3 times 31, which is 93. And then we want to bring down our minus sign. We want to do 11 over 3, make it to where it has a denominator of 24. So multiply by 8, we get 24. And then 8 times 11 is 88. Now we can start looking at the problem. Again, the first thing you're going to look at is simply these 2 terms, left to right. And so what I know is that if I subtract a negative, it turns into a plus positive. So 12 plus 93 is 105. 24 stays the same. We can bring down our 88 over 24 and our subtraction sign. Now I want to just subtract straight across. 105 minus 88. If you're not sure, you can always go back to your Desmos and you can do 105 minus 88. It equals 17. And so that's going to be your top number. 24 does not change. And then you check to see, does 17 over 24 reduce? In this case, it does not. One easy way to check is, I know that 17 is a prime number, so the only way it would reduce is if 24 was divided by 17, and it does not. So 17 over 24 is your correct answer. Moving on to number 7, we again, in this case, have some mixed numbers. We want to go ahead and change them to where they are improper fractions. The first thing I'm going to do is change 3 and 1/4 to 4 times 3 plus 1, which gives me 13 over 4. It stays negative. 5 times 2 is 10 plus 1 is 11 over 5. And then 4/5 is already that way. We also want to go ahead and change these to where they have a common denominator. In this case, the smallest denominator I can come up with is 20. So I'm going to multiply 13 over 4 by 5. It stays negative. 4 times 5 is 20. And 13 times 5 is 65. Bring down your minus sign. Again, I want to change 11/5 to where it has 20 as a denominator. So 4 times 5 is 20. And then 11 times 4 is 44. Bring down your minus sign. I want 4/5 to have a denominator of 20 as well. Multiply by 4 again. I get 20 for 5. And then 4 times 4 is 16. Again, I'm just going to focus on these first two. And so now we have a negative minus a positive. And so one thing I like to do is I always change my subtraction signs to addition signs. This will help out because if I change this to a positive, this becomes negative. And then I can use the rule, well, if they have the same sign, I can just add them and keep the sign. So I know it's going to be negative because they're both negative. 65 plus 44 is 109. Again, if you're not sure how to do that, you're more than welcome to use Desmos. Bring down your minus sign and 16 over 20. And then we're going to do the same thing again here. I'm going to change this to an addition sign and move that to a negative. They now have the same sign. I can add and keep the sign. So 109 plus 16 is 125. We keep the negative sign. It's over 20. I want to reduce this back to a mixed number. So I know that 20 goes into 125 at least 6 times. It stays negative, which is going to leave me with 5 over 20. Now, I'm not finished because 5 over 20 actually reduces and it gives me negative 6 still. But if I divide both by 5, I get 1/4. And that is your final answer. Number 8, again, we have 3 terms. So the first thing I'm going to focus on is making them improper fractions. So to do that, negative 2/7 is fine. Negative 1 is not. I'm going to change it to negative 7 over 7. If you notice, I went ahead and made these have the same denominator because I noticed that this one was a 7 as well. And so to change 3 and 5/7, I'm going to do 7 times 3 is 21, plus 5 is 26, and it stays over 7. To rewrite it, negative 2 over 7 minus negative 7 over 7 plus 26 over 7. So I know that a minus negative turns into a plus positive. So negative 2 plus 7 is going to be positive 5 because when the signs are different, you subtract and keep the sign of the larger number. And then I'm going to add that to 26 over 7. Now, 5 plus 26 is 31. The 7 stays the same. I want to go ahead and reduce this back to a mixed number. So I know that 7 goes into 31 4 times. In fact, 7 times 4 is 28. So if I take 28 from 31, I'll be left with 3, and then the 7 stays the same. 4 and 3/7 is as far as it can be reduced, so that is your answer. Now we're going to take a look at some story problems, and in this case, the easiest way to do this is to read the problem first. So 1 1/2 of pizzas are left over from lunch. If 4 people split the pizza evenly for dinner, what fraction of the whole pizza will each person get? Write the numerical expression and then simplify. So here's what I know. I know that there's 1 1/2 pizzas. I also know that 4 people split it. And then the question is what fraction will each person get? And so those are the 3 most important parts of information there. So I can represent 1 1/2 like this. I know that the word splits means to divide. And if you just think about that logically, you're separating it into equal groups. So we have, this is the numerical expression we come up, 1 1/2 divided by 4. So just like before, I'm going to change these into improper fractions. So the first thing I want to do is I'm simply going to change 1 1/2 to where it is 3 over 2. And then I'm going to keep it division, and I'm going to change 4 to 4 over 1. And think back to probably 6th grade where you did keep, change, flip. So you're going to keep the first fraction, you're going to change it to multiplication, and you're going to flip the second fraction. And so then you just multiply straight across. 3 times 1 is 3. 2 times 4 is 8. And each person is going to get 3/8 of the pizza. Now, looking at problem number 10, excuse me, says, for soccer season, Brenda wants to buy a new soccer ball, a pair of shorts, and a pair of soccer shoes. The ball costs $14.50. The shorts cost half as much as the ball, and the shoes cost $20. Brenda has $15.80. How much more money does Brenda need to afford this purchase? So the first thing I notice is that it tells me that the ball costs $14.50, the shorts cost half as much as the ball, and the shoes cost $20. And I also know that she only has $15.80. And then in the question, it says, how much more does Brenda need to purchase? So how much more instantly tells me that at some point in time, I'm going to have to subtract. And so the first thing I want to know is how much does everything cost together? So I'm going to add that up. So the ball cost $14.50. The shorts cost half as much, half of $14.50. So that equals $7.25. And then the shoes cost $20. And so I'm going to add these totals up, $14.50, $7.25, and $20. And I'm going to do that off to the side here, $14.50, $7.25, and then $20. And if I add those up, I get, that's going to be 5. 5 plus 2 is 7. Decimal. 4 plus 7 is 11. 4 plus 7 is 11, so I want to put my 1 there and carry a 1. 1 plus 1 is 2, plus 2 more is 4. So the total cost to buy all of the stuff is $41.75. But Brenda only has $15.80. So I'm going to take that $41.75 and I'm going to subtract Brenda's $15.80. The difference will tell me how much money she needs to be able to purchase all three. And so 5 minus 0 is 5. 7 minus 8 I can't do, so I'm going to borrow. And I'm going to get 17 minus 8, which is 9. 0 minus 5 I can't do. I'm going to borrow again. I get 10 minus 5, which is 5. 3 minus 1 is 2. So we know that she is going to be short $25.95. So I would also write this out in a sentence. Brenda needs $25.95. And then that would be your answer. Now, looking at problem number 11, this afternoon, Jesse left school, rode the bus 3 miles, and then walked 3/4 of a mile to get home. How much further did Jesse ride than walk? Write the numerical expression and then simplify. First of all, it says he rode 3 miles, he walked 3/4 of a mile, and it says how much further. So the how much further tells me subtraction. And so I'm simply going to do 3 minus 3/4. Again, I'm going to change these to improper fractions because I think it's easier to work like that. So 3 is going to become 3 over 1. And then remember, when you subtract, you have to have a common denominator. So 4 is the common denominator. This is going to become 12 over 4 minus 3 over 4. Now, if we just work that out, 12 minus 3 is 9. The 4 stays the same. Now, I want to change this back to an improper fraction. So 4 goes into 9 2 times, and then that leaves me with 1/4 left over. So he rode 2 1/4 miles further than he walked. This concludes today's iLearn review for rational numbers. Tomorrow, we will be taking a look at rational numbers as well, particularly focusing on order of operations and placing numbers, rational numbers, and irrational numbers from least to greatest, and then also determining whether or not it falls into a certain category. Is it a rational, or is it irrational? Does it repeat? Does it terminate? And then make that decision. So stay tuned for tomorrow.